We got NFL news and notes with John McMullen from 97.3 ESPN.com. Also, the national NFL columnist at FanRag Sports NFL. Check out his NFL work at JF McMullen on Twitter. Those of you watching on Facebook Live see I'm having a little bit of problems getting this microphone to stay right where I need it to. There we go. Check us out on Facebook Live. Go to our 97.3 ESPN Facebook page. You can see what happens during the show. We're live on there right now. John McMullen joins me with a little look at the NFL. There's something about this time of the year, John, that has people speculating, right? It's kind of like the...
Yeah, it does. Josh and I were just discussing that. My pet peeve is where people are going to end up columns, and there was one today from... I won't mention his name, but on it.
Oh, we lost John. Look at that. He just went boop. There was one today. I won't mention his name. Who was going where, John? Give us the details, man. John McMullen back with us in a second here. One of the things we're going to ask him about is this LeSean McCoy possibility. I mean, could the Bills release LeSean McCoy? Does that make sense? And if they did, would the Eagles be interested in bringing back their former 1,600-yard rusher? But I want to know who the guy is that he's talking about. Who's the guy that John was, insinuating in this article? It's that time of the year. This guy's going here. He's a fit there. Writers need to write. Everybody needs to have material out there. The NFL is nonstop, so we're always trying to connect the dots. We're always trying to say, well, this coach is there. Let's look at the Eagles situation. Mike Gill is the wide receiver coach with the Rams. And he was with the Bears before that. Alshon Jeffries and Kenny Britt, they make sense. So, John, you left a cliffhanger right there when you dropped off.
I don't know where. I kept talking. I don't know what happened.
You said, I read an article, I won't mention his name, where so-and-so is going, and then you didn't say who and where they were going.
Well, it was Le'Veon Bell, and, the speculation, would it be the Steelers or the Giants or Titans or the other teams? And the obvious answer is the Steelers. If they don't get a long-term deal done, they're going to franchise them. And, I get the excitement when people hear names, but there's certain guys, Bell, Eric Berry, even K'Wan Short in Carolina, Chandler Jones, they're not getting to the open market. We all know it, but as you say, Mike, that people like to speculate, like to dream about superstar players changing teams, and it occasionally happens, but there's usually a reason behind it, and when you have star players like that, they're not going anywhere. If worse comes to worse, they're going to get the franchise tag placed on them.
What about there's and this is a total speculative article from NFL.com, basically saying 30 players who could be released. One of them was LeSean McCoy. Do you see the Bills? And the reason they gave was that he's not a good fit for their one-cut running attack that they're going to put in out there. So and look, he got a big deal, LeSean McCoy, and I joked that if I'm an NFL player, I almost don't want to sign one of those big numbered long-term contracts, because all it means is I'm bound to get cut sooner than later. You're never making it to the end of those contracts. So is McCoy, to you, a candidate to be released by the Bills?
Yeah, we've heard those one-cut stories before. That was the narrative of Chip Kelly, if you remember. He wanted a one-cut runner. But LeSean's coming off a great season in Buffalo, and anytime you have a new regime and he makes as much money as he does, it's a slight possibility. I would put it at 20% or less. I think as that new coaching staff gets him under the wing, they're going to realize this is a heck of a player. He's only 28 years old. There's a little tread on the tire, and I think their theory was the old Patriots mentality, better to give up a year early on a player than a year late. So all of that stuff, you can, as you say, you can speculate, but it's very, very unlikely a guy coming off the season he had is going to be released, especially when you don't have the heir apparent. So you have to look at it from that standpoint too. So I would say that's very, very unlikely.
Yeah, and then of course, as soon as if in fact something happened there, it would be, well, would Howie Roseman bring him back? Would the Eagles be interested in a reunion with a guy like LaShawn McCoy? And he's a guy who's interesting because he's 28 years old. So you're in that, like you said, maybe you do it a year early because you start to get in that interesting time frame in a running back's career.
Yeah, 30 obviously is that period. And, from the Eagles' perspective and the fans' perspective, there's this it's almost a back-to-the-future mentality. It's like, do you want LaShawn McCoy back? Do you want Deshaun Jackson back? Can we move forward?
Well, a lot of Eagles fans didn't want them to go in the first place.
No, I understand that. And certainly in hindsight, they shouldn't have moved on as quickly from a talent perspective. But you can't revisit. LaShawn makes a little bit more sense because he's younger. He's still in the wheelhouse of his career, whereas Deshaun is 30 and he's going to start to become a declining player. And, hey, he would still be an improvement on what's here.
Yeah.
But, again, if you have a second-year quarterback, your mindset and the correct mindset is to get a core group around them that's going to grow together.
Yeah, well, I would contend, though, John, and this is something I said during the year. I'll see if you agree or not. Andy's offense is very similar to Doug's offense, right? When Donovan was here, he didn't have a lot of weapons, but he always had Westbrook. And the Eagles, while they didn't have a lot of weapons, they didn't have a Westbrook either. It seemed like that was a correlation that was missing between the Andy offenses and this Doug offenses they both didn't have great wideouts, but at least he had Westbrook. They didn't have a Westbrook for Wentz this year.
No, they didn't have Westbrook. They didn't have a
McCoy.
Thrash. Forget about it. I mean, they didn't have anything. Ryan, I overstated a bit. Ryan Matthews was somewhat effective when he was out there, but the injuries and everything else. The point is, Carson didn't have much around him at the skill positions. And you're right. I mean, Donovan didn't have great receivers for the majority of his time until T.O. for the one season. And Westbrook kind of carried things. But it's not because that's the way Andy wanted it to go. It's because they weren't able to get the types of receivers that they wanted. And in a best case scenario, in a pie in the sky world, you want both. You want a top tier running back and good receivers, and that's the ultimate goal. And that's why I say wherever the Eagles end up picking 14 or 15. Still the most likely scenario to me is playmaker, not necessarily a running back or a wide receiver. They need both. Who's the biggest playmaker left on the board? And it can come from different positions. Offense can come from different positions.
John McMullen's with us looking at the NFL, of course, every day at this time with John McMullen at JF McMullen as the franchise tags. John, give a little overview of the franchise tag, what it means for certain players who fall under that category.
Yeah, well, the window opened today, and you have 2 weeks. So till March 1st, you can put the franchise tag or the transition tag on particular players.
Which you rarely ever see.
Yeah, it's not as it doesn't happen as much. And there's 2 levels of franchise tags. There's the exclusive where nobody can go after that particular player. You can't even give him an offer sheet. He's yours, and he's guaranteed either top 5 money at the position or a 20% raise in the case of a player like Kirk Cousins or Alshon Jeffries, who played under the franchise tag this year. They get a 20% raise over the franchise tag from last season. So they're really, really expensive under the tag. And then there's the non-exclusive tag, which basically other teams could sign your player to an offer sheet. So if you wanted Le'Veon Bell, for instance, you could try to prime away with a big deal. However, if you do and the team says, okay, take him, you have to give 2 first-round picks back. So that's why it rarely happens that somebody signs elsewhere under the franchise tag, even if it's not the exclusive version. So basically, if they put that on you, it's a clear indication you're going to stay with the team that put the tag on you. One more thing, though, is you can always take it off the table. We saw it with Carolina and Josh Norman. They placed the franchise tag on him. They didn't like the way negotiations were going, and they pulled it off him. So that's another scenario that could happen down the road. But, you know, as GMs talk about the way the salary cap is going, it's projected to go up to 165 to 170 million, somewhere in that range this year. And they think it's going to be a 190 2 years down the road if the projections hold up. And that means more teams are willing to tag people because of the escalating money and long-term deals agents are looking for. So I think you're going to see quite a few franchise tags this year unless teams work out longer-term deals, and that's the ultimate goal for both sides.
Who are some of your, I guess some of the candidates would be Bell, Pryor, Poe, maybe Berry. They got a couple options, although Berry says he won't do it. You got Hightower, Short, K'Wan Short. You got Chandler Jones, maybe Gilmore in Buffalo. Alshon Jeffrey could be one. Who some of the guys that you think? Cousins, obviously, another one.
Yeah, those are the major ones. Although I don't think the Bears are going to tag Jeffrey when it's all said and done, because that becomes a really, really big number for him. Because as I said, he played under it last year, and that would put him at about $17 million. The Chiefs are going to tag Eric Berry first if they can't get something long-term done. Now, he said he's not going to play under the franchise tag, but just because you put it on somebody doesn't mean you can't sign them to a longer-term deal. So they're just going to protect themselves, don't want to lose a player of that caliber. If they do work out something with Berry, then they might place the tag on Poe, as you mentioned. Other guys, yeah, I mean, Washington's on record. They're going to franchise Kirk Cousins if they have to. Pittsburgh, haven't said it, but it was reported by NFL Network already. They're going to place it on him if they have to. And Chandler Jones, Arizona, already on record saying they will use it. So, yeah, a lot of these guys you're dreaming about, they're not going to be there when the open market starts.
Right, and the Eagles, obviously, no possible guy. Benny Logan's their highest profile guy. He wouldn't fit in that category for them, so they're not really in the mix on that. A couple other guys interesting as we look forward to the start of free agency season. Of course, guys getting released. Old Eagles QB Nick Foles looks like he's going to be on the market. Can you envision Nick Foles gobbling up a starting job this offseason?
Yeah, I could. I still don't think it's likely. I think he's sort of the under-the-radar guy who could possibly be a starter. If nothing else works out, still more likely he'll get a high-profile backup position. You know, it's interesting. I think the Chiefs have a team option on him, which is, I believe, $6.25 million. And if you think about it, that sounds like a lot of money for a backup quarterback, but that's less than what the Eagles are paying Chase Daniel. So I'm a little surprised the Chiefs are going to let him go. They do have Tyler Bray that they like, so it probably has more to do with the fact that they have some depth and think he could be a really solid backup. But, yeah, some of these teams, like San Francisco, there's so many teams in the quarterback market. Chicago, the Jets, Cleveland, as we know. A lot of them are going to get it done. I think Cleveland will be the team to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. A lot of the teams are going to go draft. Arizona is another one. I mean, they have to They have to get the heir apparent to Carson Palmer. So there's so many teams in desperate need of quarterbacks that they're not all going to get the guys they want. And I think that's where Nick could kind of fit in as sort of a bridge starter somewhere.
Yeah, and you've also you mentioned just a few teams. There's like 7, 8 teams out there that need quarterbacks, but you got the Cutlers of the world, the Ryan Fitzpatricks, who are probably going to be looking for a lot of money. That's where Foles can kind of sneak in. You would think at maybe a little bit less money for some of these teams, and still see what happens in Buffalo with Taylor. There's so many very intriguing quarterback storylines as we get ready to hit March.
Yeah, there really is, and there always is, and that's why I say the draft. Everyone starts this year and say, I don't like the quarterbacks in this draft. I don't know if they're going to go high. They're going to get pushed up the board.
I saw a mock draft today that had Trubisky taken number 2 overall.
Yeah, and Jason Locke and 4 of CBS said Patrick Mahomes might go number 3 overall. Mahomes, number 3. So I mean,
man, that Lee Steinberg's pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think that's going to happen, but I do think he's going to be a first-round pick, which is interesting. And a lot of people say Houston at the bottom half of the first round, which is another team in the quarterback market, despite the fact that they have to pay Brock Osweiler one more season. They kind of know that's going to be it with him. So they're looking for the long-term answer. Keeping him in state might make a lot of sense. But, yeah, I think there's going to be 4 quarterbacks drafted in the first round, unless one of these guys completely falls on its face. That's always a possibility, that they have a terrible pro day. Happened to Teddy Bridgewater a couple of years ago,
right?
And he fell down the board. So it's always a possibility. But the more likely scenario is if they hold up physically with their skill sets, and I'm talking about the top 3 of Trubisky, Watson, Kaiser, in no particular order. If they hold up at their pro days and show their physical gifts that people think they have, they're all going to be top 10 choices. Every single one of them.
Crazy to think, just because you play that position that you're going to get, someone to take it. And it's like, haven't these teams learned, by now that you just got to stop reaching, that you can get a guy, a little bit later on. Just be patient. And the guy might, but so many teams are not patient.
Yeah, and if you think about the Bridgewater and the Derek Carr year, those were the guys before Teddy's injury. He looked like he was going to be a star. Derek Carr is a star already, and he was a second-round pick.
Right. You got Wilson.
So, yeah, sometimes it is better to wait than to push it, especially when you have guys who probably shouldn't be there at the top of the draft. Jared Goff, a perfect example of that last season. It's probably better not to push it. But teams just get wary and they get desperate and they get antsy and they pick guys probably before they should be picked. But then there's the other route you can go, and we've kind of alluded to it on the show a little bit over the past few days, and the fact that you're bending over backwards trying to make Jimmy Garoppolo out like he's, today I heard the Aaron Rodgers comparison for the first time. And a guy's thrown 94 passes in 3 seasons. Now, you compare that to Carson Wentz, who, remember, was lights out in the first 3 games last season. Looked like the second coming, and then the hiccups came. But if you think about those 2 particular quarterbacks, one has dropped back over 600 times, and every time you do that against an NFL defense, you sort of learn something. And the other, through 3 seasons, has only seen 94 sort of live rounds. And they're trying to make him out like he's going to be Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
So there's 2 ways you can look at it.
I saw, talking about Garoppolo, I find that story to be very intriguing because there are 50-50, it seems, opinions on. Some people think that he's going to be, very good, and that. But you're right. You heard Rodgers, Julian Edelman. It was his own player who said that he's got Favre-Rodgers confidence. Jimmy Garoppolo.
Well, that would be, God bless him if he does. And certainly, if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else is going to believe.
Even if he has Favre-Rodgers confidence, does he have Favre-Rodgers skill?
Yeah, I know for a fact he doesn't. I mean, there are a few people who have ever played this game that have the arm strength of Brett Favre. He'd probably be in the top three as far as arm strength. And Aaron Rodgers, we've talked about it numerous times, is as a well-rounded skill set. When you talk about arm strength and accuracy and mobility, there's never been anything like Aaron Rodgers. And I can rubber stamp right now, after 94 throws, Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't have Aaron Rodgers' skill set. And that's not an insult. Nobody does. Nobody in the league does. So to assume that Jimmy Garoppolo is it's just absurd.
John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com, FanRag Sports NFL, and at JF McMullen on Twitter. Of course, the NFL news cycle never stops. So, of course, every day we give you all the NFL news and notes right here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Check out John's piece on Victor Cruz right now at FanRagSports.com NFL. A good piece there on Victor Cruz, who we'll see. There were some reports at the Broncos, and then, of course, they got squashed right away. Will we see Victor Cruz, who got released by the Giants, back in the NFL? I don't know. He's an interesting guy because of all the injuries, and who knows where his career would have gone had that injury not occurred in Philadelphia.
He was a heck of a receiver, and that was catastrophic. But as you mentioned, with Lee Steinberg, that was the agent doing his work, getting it out there quickly that people have interest. Victor's going to have a difficult time because he didn't show much explosion coming back from the injury, and that's understandable. He'll get a job, but it will be as a slot receiver, and he'll have to make a roster because he's certainly nowhere near what he was, and that was a Pro Bowl level receiver before that injury.
All right, John's got more. Tomorrow we'll have the latest NFL news and notes at JF McMullen on Twitter. Thanks, pal.
Hey, thanks, Mike.